Before we start today's show, we'll be discussing a police-involved shooting. Though we will not dive into violent specifics, please do take care while listening. Wednesday, July 22nd, a Madison police officer shot and killed a man on the corner of Williamson and North Baldwin in the Marquette neighborhood. The shooting occurred midday in front of many witnesses. Joining me to break down what we know is CityCast Madison executive producer Hayley Sperling. Hayley, thanks for being here.
Hi, Bianca. I'm not happy to be here, but we're here.
Yeah, this is very hard. Transparently, we are recording this episode at 9:15 p.m. on Wednesday night. We had a different program scheduled for today. It's Thursday. But given the breaking news that transpired, we made the decision this conversation had to come first, obviously. So we just want to share the basics of what we know. No super in the weeds details, but the shooting happened around 1:30 p.m. The man has not yet been publicly ID'd. MPD said he's a 30-year-old man and that his family has been notified. Video quickly circulated on social media of the incident. It was a Madison police officer who shot this man 3 times. The deceased was on the ground at the point of the shooting, and MPD says the officer who delivered the fatal shots was the officer injured by the knife that the man was carrying. Those are about the amount of details we're going to share. There's a lot of videos out there from a lot of different angles of that altercation. Hayley, me, you, the whole team, we've watched the videos many times over, the different angles, and there's no easy way to say it, but today's just been a terrible day in Madison.
Yeah, there's no easy way to have this conversation, but it is nonetheless incredibly important for us to be here talking about it. Those videos are horrific. I don't want to ever see anything like that again in my life, yet we live in a society where these occurrences happen all too frequently. And people often think in a place like Madison, as progressive and as loving and as caring of a community as we are, that this doesn't happen here. But this is not the first time this has happened here. And I think that is abundantly clear in what I saw today. People are angry. People are frustrated. People are tired and they're sad and they're grieving. Today it's been really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. And my heart. Honestly, I know folks come to CityCast Madison because they know that we're an optimistic space. We're trying to be positive. We're not gonna, really drag into the details here, but my heart is screaming. I want to say exactly what I saw on that video. And, we're going to get into the details as they come along further, out here. But yeah, it's numbing and it's frightening, and it's not a society I think anyone wants to live in. How do we live together and address crime in ways that doesn't involve folks not being around anymore? And I think that's the question all the way around here. So, the Madison Police Chief, John Patterson, held a press conference after the shooting. Our producer, Jade Isiri Ramos, pulled some of that. Here's what Chief Patterson had to say.
I want to start with an acknowledgement that today involves a very traumatic incident, that has occurred in a neighborhood that has experienced a lot of trauma in the past, a significant history of incidents like what I'm about to discuss. And so I ask that everyone in our community please keep this particular neighborhood and the historical trauma, including today, in mind. And please take a moment to reflect and offer some support to one another.
I appreciated him setting that tone at the beginning of that press conference. And I think there's no two ways about it that this is a traumatic day for everyone and anyone who's seen the footage, anyone who was there, obviously for the family. And there's also no two ways about the fact that this happened very close to another incident of a fatal shooting of a young Black man, Tony Robinson, on Willie Street. You referenced it, Hayley, and the community is still healing from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all knew something was horribly wrong when the collective of CityCast Madison, who lives on the east side, heard so many sirens going down our neighborhoods. And very quickly, I knew that this was not going to be a good day. And after seeing what had happened and learning more, personally, like I was immediately taken back to 2015. I was a student journalist at the time covering this horrific story for the Badger Herald. And this shooting that we are covering here today, this occurred just a block and a half from where Tony Robinson was killed. And again, Tony Robinson, for folks who don't know, was a 19-year-old Black man who was fatally shot by Madison Police officer Matt Kenney in the stairwell of an apartment on the 1100 block of Willie Street on March 6, 2015. It was an incredible sense of deja vu. It was a horrific sense of feeling like we had done this before. When I went back to the Willie Street area where folks had gathered in protest at the site of today's shooting, there were a lot of people there, a lot of city leaders there, notably Sharon Irwin, Tony Robinson's grandmother, was there. I can only imagine the feelings that are going through her and her family's minds if the rest of Madison is feeling this caught up in such a horrific story.
Yeah. I mean, my brain definitely went there too. I interviewed Sharon on the show, CityCast Madison, back in 2023 about this because she was still fighting for answers about what happened, you know, and getting that information to the public. And it does beckon to that moment. And it made me think, you know, like, how far have we come? You know, we're not landing conclusions, but there's a man dead, right? And you've shared, Hayley, that protesters gathered at the site of the shooting. You went out there to cover it. What can you tell us about what you saw, what you heard, what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, again, immediately when we knew what was going on with this story, this was just such a situation where I knew that we had to be there. It started off with folks gathering at that intersection of Willie Street and Baldwin Street. There were maybe, you know, a few dozen people at the scene who were holding signs. Some people had brought flowers to lay down at the site of the shooting. I think one thing that was, you know, particularly notable to me is that folks were laying down flowers at the site of the shooting, but police had already washed away the blood that was on the street. It's a little graphic, I know, but it just felt very striking to me that how quickly these things go away, but our community won't let us forget, right? So like I said, there were a few dozen people out there, but the group grew and grew and grew, despite the fact that cops had blocked off Willie Street. I had to go like all the way around on Jenny Street and like cut behind to get to where the protest was. And I'm not really sure how it came up, but folks were kind of talking about like, we need people to stand up. We need people to make noise. We need people to do something. And they said we should go to the Capitol. We should do something. And someone was like, well, Concerts on the Square is happening tonight. So that was where that decision kind of came from, where folks ended up walking from Willie Street down East Wash. They shut down East Wash. And, you know, for the police part, they did a good job sort of protecting the protesters and the marchers from oncoming traffic. But also the protesters were doing that themselves, right? Like they got people out to the front, they got people out on bikes, setting up, you know, more or less perimeters to make sure that folks could cross safely through. And they shut down East Washington, which I haven't seen anything like that in years. You know, the last time was probably 2020 in the wake of the George Floyd protests. And then before that, again, back in 2015 with the killing of Tony Robinson. So folks were really getting riled up. And by the time we were walking down East Wash, more people had joined. People had kind of like come in from the sidelines. There were a lot of cars honking, you know, in solidarity. And we made the way up to the Capitol.
You got the chance to speak with Assembly District 76 candidate Juliana Bennett, and that you got audio from that.
How are you feeling right now?
Pissed. Yeah. Very sorry. I should be more together. I'm very angry.
What are you looking for from the Madison Police at this time?
At this time, I'm looking for accountability.
What does that look like to you?
To me, that looks like an investigation that is not marred by trying to cover up what happened. Even in the language of which we talk about this, we talk about who the person is and what he did. We do not talk about the police officers that did a hostile escalation of a minor issue.
What do you want the city of Madison to know right now?
I want the city of Madison to know that when we stand up together, we are strong. This keeps happening in our community because we have not yet done anything about Tony Robinson. Nothing substantial has come out of that. If we want this not to happen in our communities, then we need all of you to stand up right now with us to stop it.
Oh, it's emotional tape to hear, and you getting out there and really, while people are processing this in real time, and from the videos that I heard other people like saying we want this officer arrested for fatally shooting this man. Hayley, as you noted, the group was moved eventually to the Capitol Square where Concerts on the Square was happening. What was it like there at concerts? Because I saw the photos you posted on our Instagram and Facebook that were pretty telling. It was people wrote in saying like, this is photojournalism. It was a tense clash seemingly between protesters and some concert goers.
Yeah, I mean, people often say that Madison, when you talk about it, it's a tale of two cities. And I think that was so abundantly clear in what happened tonight. And I saw some things that I was discouraged by in terms of behavior from folks who were attending concerts that night. But I also saw a lot of behavior that I was encouraged by, right? We had people who had their nights disrupted, who had what should have been a lovely affair, Concerts on the Square, essentially shut down. But on the flip side of that, we have a man who lost his life. We have a community who is grieving. We have a community who is angry. We have a community who is begging for people to listen right now. And for what it's worth, I will say the folks at concerts were, very professional about the whole thing, and they were being very supportive. They did offer a moment of silence. They offered the microphone for use. I don't think it was necessarily really a question. It was kind of like, we're going to take this mic, right? And for their part, the protesters, the majority were not messing with the instruments. We're not trying to tear down AV equipment. There were a couple of people who were, messing with instruments, and that was very quickly shut down. They were like, this is not what we're here to do. We're here to make a point. We're here to talk about the issues at hand, not just mess around on these drums. So it was honestly... It was something like I've never seen before, right? Because you have this group of, at this point, was over 100 protesters who were at the top of the Capitol Square, marching, and who came up on stage, who came up in the place where the Madison, concerts were about to be performed. And we're saying, you're not going to have the night that you planned. And I'm not sorry about it. And there were, I did witness a couple of people who were very protrude by the protest. I saw one woman even try to shove some protesters around. That was very quickly shut down. Again, I think these protesters, they did not want things to get out of hand. They did not want things to get violent. They were very expressly clear about that because no one in this situation was prepared for an escalation there. I think that it was truly a sight to behold. You have thousands of people who are on the Capitol Square waiting to hear this symphony, waiting to hear this concert, and then it gets derailed by this massive protest. And it was kind of, I don't know, it was really just like an awe-inspiring thing. We had folks who were on stage talking about what they needed, talking about what people need to do, and that was really stand up and use their voice. And there were people who were coming out of the crowd to join the protesters, people like ringing cowbells in support, people who were saying like, yes, we need to have this. And, at the end of the day, they shut down concerts. They said, all right, we're not going to have our show tonight. We are going to respect this and move on. But I think one thing is very clear is that Madison is not ready to sit back and take this anymore. The people will be heard, and they will be heard whether you want to be a part of it or not. This is going to continue happening unless something changes is really the key point that folks were trying to get across tonight.
Yeah, I heard a lot of no justice, no peace, that sentiment rings true, and that if injustices are feeling felt in our community, like, you don't get to eat cake and listen to Beethoven or what have you. Obviously this all comes to, there is a larger picture here, and this call that resonated across the country after George Floyd, and witnessing, it's really just changed the culture of people witnessing police altercations and how they're handled, and being like, is this the way? Is fatal force necessary here? There are a lot of questions swirling. I've seen a lot of comments online of people in other directions saying that those police officers went home alive. Like, there are a lot of feelings around this. This is very fresh. But, I understand that the head of the Office of the Independent Police Monitor for Madison was there at the portion of the protest that happened at Concerts on the Square. And naturally, their whole office is around to monitor instances, that are squarely in this realm, that what we saw happen today.
Arameet Glass, our city's interim independent police monitor, was on the scene today. She was there at the protest, and she gave like a very impassioned speech from the stage of Concerts on the Square, where she essentially said, I told you this was going to happen. I told you, as in Madison Police, that we are moments away from another Black person's death specifically. And I think for me too, I have kind of been waiting for our city to rise up after the Office of the Independent Monitor released their report on the death of Richard Lee Johnson, where it was found that police did play a significant role in this man's ultimately untimely passing. People are angry. There are a lot of emotions. And so, yeah, I think now we're going to hear a little bit of Arameet Glass's speech from the protest.
They knew it was coming. I told them it was coming because these officers do not have the temperament, do not have the respect, do not have the blood for Black people in this community, for people that are living unhoused in this community, for people that are disadvantaged and disenfranchised in this community. So I'm saying to each of you, after we get done shouting, after we get done shutting stuff down, I need you to show up.
Impassioned is the perfect word for that. And naturally, this moment is just amplifying the heat that was already there. And to hear those words from her, it's a really hard place to be. And it's not a good day in Madison.
Yeah, I think she did a really good part of saying the quiet part out loud here, saying that these officers, quote, do not have the respect, do not have the love for Black people in this community, unquote. Like, she is calling this out and saying that there needs to be a change. We need to literally have a change of heart on our police force in order for people to stop dying. And I think a big part of that is going to be, we're going to hopefully hear a lot more from her investigation whenever that will come out. But, her also saying that they're not giving me what I need to make this investigation happen is very troubling. Obviously, we don't have the details of that. And this is going to be a long road here. Wisconsin's Department of Justice, their criminal investigation department, is going to be investigating this incident. They do that whenever there is an officer-involved shooting. So I'm very curious to see what comes of that. I'm very curious to see if charges come forward from our district attorney. That did not happen in the case of Tony Robinson. And I think our community is still very upset about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Hayley, this is all super fresh, and I just can't say how much I appreciate you for getting out there tonight. Put yourself in your reporter role. Is there anything left to share from what you learned while you were out tonight?
Yeah, I think the next steps here is that people are going to continue getting loud. And specifically, there are plans for folks to protest at the next city council meeting. That's happening August 4th at 6:30 p.m. So I think we can expect a lot of new information to come from that, a lot of new voices, a lot of frustrations to come out of that. We will probably be on the ground again to cover that situation. But that is really sort of the as far as I know, the next steps here from the will of the people, more or less.
Okay, well, I appreciate you and Jade, our producer, coming together tonight to cover this with me, and our teammate Beck Henriksen, who got out on the scene downtown to keep folks in the loop on our social media with you, Hayley. Hayley, take good care tonight, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Bianca.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. We'll be back tomorrow morning, hopefully with more information and details, and also more stories from around the city. Until then, please take very good care of yourself and each other. Talk soon.